I want you to meet Sergeant Benjamin Anthony. Sergeant Benjamin Anthony. He is a combat veteran of the Israeli Defense Forces. He is a reservist with the IDF today, and he has participated in recent campaigns with the IDF, and he travels throughout the English-speaking world speaking on these topics of the work of the IDF. He founded the group Our Soldiers Speak, that brings the truth of Israeli soldiers from the battlefront to campuses and universities to talk to college students. We're honored that he would be with us today. He is a brave and unwavering defender of Israel, Sergeant Benjamin Anthony. Would you welcome him?
I'd like all of us to know that I direct all of my comments in my name only, not on behalf of my organization, nor on behalf of the Israel Defense Forces, nor on behalf of the government of the State of Israel. But in my name only, I direct my comments to the safety and the well-being and the safe return of the members of the Israel Defense Forces to their homes and to their families. Just yesterday, as I presented in a synagogue in New Jersey during the Sabbath prayers of the early morning, I walked into that synagogue, and out of the mouth of an 8, 9, 10-year-old boy came a question that truly jolted me. The question was, if you're a reservist in the Israel Defense Forces, if you're a soldier, what are you doing here? It's a very, very interesting question. I don't know how many veterans there are in this room, but I know that you are here. And I know that any veteran, whether they be a reservist or not, knows well that when the call comes to bear arms in the defense of your country, you wish to be there alongside your men, and only there alongside your men. My brigade has not been mobilized. It's an uncomfortable feeling. But I'm particularly grateful for this opportunity because at least I get, by way of my words, hopefully to have a positive impact upon this group, this vital group, as Dr. Krauthammer expressed. So thank you. It was at this very time, some 8 years ago, that I found myself serving deep inside Lebanon during the events of the Second Lebanon War, which was a very brutal war indeed, but of course all wars are brutal. I was located along with various members of my unit or my brigade in a house that had been identified by Hezbollah fighters, and they began to rocket and to shell that house. Now, when you have incoming rockets towards a house in which you shelter, the walls shudder with such ferocity that there's a protocol within the Israel Defense Forces which states that you must not pat down your own person to check that you are not wounded, but you must turn to the soldier next to you so that he might be of calm enough mind to know whether blood is oozing from you, whether there's a wound open upon you. And as I turned to the soldier next to me and he turned to the soldier next to him, and we patted one another down, I paused and I asked myself how I, a boy from Leeds in England, ever managed to end up inside that awful place in the Middle East. And the answer came very, very swiftly, and it came very surely, and it came in the form of the reading of the Old Testament that we recounted just this past Sabbath morning Just this past Saturday morning, where prior to the battle for the land of Israel, Moshe turned to the tribes of Gad and Reuven, and he met with some resistance from them, and he said rhetorically, he asked of them, "Achechem yavo lemilchama va'atem teshvu po?" Will your brethren go out to war whilst you dwell here? And that was me, that was my answer. I was there because I made the personal, though by no means unique, decision that my brothers would not go to war whilst I stayed in the United Kingdom, and essentially did very little indeed. I believed that then, and I believe it now. My friends, there's nobody here in this room, and I don't mean it to be dismissive, but rather to be candid with you, there's nobody here in this room who needs school me on the realities of war. There's nobody who needs to talk to me about casualties that fall in the battlefield. I've seen it, as has every member of my brigade, most likely. I've walked past limbless bodies of the Israel Defense Forces, and I've walked past the dead bodies of the members of the Israel Defense Forces. It's a dreadful sight because you only get a snapshot of that death, for we operate at night, so you only see these dead bodies in flashes of blue and grey when there's a nearby detonation. Nobody here needs school me or teach me about the likelihood of kidnapping of our troops. I'm aware of it. I served in a war, the Second Lebanon War, which after all was waged in no small part to return home Ehud Goldwasser, Eldad Regev, Zichronam Levracha, and Gilad Shalit, who had been kidnapped during the opening events of that war. And despite the fact that nobody who served alongside me knew any of those three soldiers, every one of us was willing to clip closed our combat vests and walk and march forward into who knows what. I'm aware of that threat. Nobody here needs school me about how war can ravage a family or the impact that it can have upon one. Just 2 weeks ago, I drove my youngest brother, Alexander, to the gates of war as he had been drafted into his reserve unit just a few weeks after being demobilized from full-time service to join up as a tank driver. Consider that for a moment. Consider the last occasion on which you gave a ride to your sons or your daughters, your brothers or your sisters. Most likely it will have been for their ultimate benefit. Here was I and many others driving my youngest sibling to the gates of war. And what's so very striking about that story is that in Israel it's so perfectly average. It's the story of every father and every mother, of every brother, of every sister, of every son and of every daughter. Until this Friday, I was in my home in Bat Yam. It's a town on the coast, some 10 minutes drive south of Tel Aviv. Every single night, I've gone to bed with the absolute certainty and knowledge that I will be awakened to the siren of rockets wailing away, warning me of to the sound of sirens rather, wailing away, warning me of incoming rockets toward that vicinity. Those sirens have rung out reliably at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't sleep beyond 7. Every day as I've sat in my office in Tel Aviv, just adjacent to the headquarters of the Israel Defense Forces, I've had to leave that office because of the sirens wailing out time and again, warning us of a rocket hurtling towards us. And in either case, as I have descended into the bomb shelters, whether it be the shelter at the base of my apartment block or the shelter at the base of my office block, I've luxuriated in the fact that I have a full 90 seconds, 90 seconds, to make my way towards that shelter. And as I take that walk, I want you to know that not for a moment can I forget the fact that for some 12, 13 long years, the citizens of southern Israel have had not 90 seconds, not 30 seconds, but a mere 15 seconds in order to make their way into the bomb shelters. The citizens of the towns of Sderot, of Beersheba, of Ashkelon, of Ashdod. I can't forget the fact nor escape the guilt of knowing that there is an entire generation being raised up over there in southern Israel, where barely any of whom do not suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the never-ending rocket fire. My friends, threats such as those have to be beaten back. This panel is entitled Myths and Facts. I want to very, very swiftly rattle through just a couple of myths that may exist in your minds, maybe not. But I want to establish those myths because I want them to serve as the context for what it is that I'm advocating, and I plan to advocate before the conclusion of my comments. The first myth about which you must be clear is that what is raging over there in Israel at this time, or more precisely in Gaza, is not just about Gaza, and it is not just about Hamas. Let me explain why. Why it is that I believe that the entire Zionist experiment rests in no small part upon what it is that we do during this current campaign. There's been a policy of the Israel Defense Forces to what they call mow the lawn over there in Gaza. Some of you will be familiar with this. It means that every 2 years or so, we go into Gaza and then leave and wait for another 2 years. That policy cannot be the go-to policy on this occasion because there are too many unknowns across the coming 2 years. Let me delineate them for you. First, we do not know who will be the President of the United States of America within the next 2 years. Maybe better than this one vis-a-vis Israel, maybe worse, and I don't say that tongue-in-cheek. It's not for me to speak to that, but we don't know. We don't know who will be the Prime Minister of the State of Israel in 2 years. We do not know whether Hezbollah will still be embroiled in a battle in Syria. Perhaps they'll be extricated from there within 2 years and be ready to fire their rockets upon us from southern Lebanon once more. To put Hezbollah's capabilities into perspective for you, from Gaza have been launched approximately 1,500 rockets that have brought us to our knees. Hezbollah has between 70 and 100,000 missiles and rockets that they are ready to deploy upon us at the rate of 2,000 per day. We don't know where ISIS will be in 2 years. We don't know if the Israeli Defense Forces will be inside Jordan as an ally of the Jordanian military battling back against ISIS. And we don't know whether Iran will or will not be a nuclear capability in 2 years' time. So anybody who thinks otherwise should think again. It's as a consequence of that myth and that myth above all else that I want to break another myth. The myth that suggests that there's nothing new here. That when rockets rain in from Gaza, we've seen all of this before and this is well-charted territory. That's false. It is Mark Twain who said that history does not repeat itself, at best it rhymes. In other words, there are certain lessons from the past, but there are distinctions to be made in the present. Let me express some of those very quickly. In 2008-2009, during Operation Cast Lead, our defensive operation inside Gaza, the number of our citizens under the shadow of rocket fire from Gaza rested at the alarming figure of 1 million. By 2012, Operation Pillar of Defense, it rested at 3.5 million. Today, the number of our citizens living within the shadow of rocket fire rests at 5 million. It is not too much of a stress to say that that is approximately 2/3 of the Jewish population of the Jewish state. And the towns that used to be restricted to those names, of Ashdod, of Ashkelon, of Beersheba, of Sderot, now belong to a far broader list. A list that includes Tel Aviv, Zichron Yaakov, Haifa, and the holy city of Jerusalem. So the threats have not reduced over time, they've increased. The other myth that I want to bust very, very swiftly is the idea that there's no good answer over there inside Gaza as to how do we quell this rocket fire. That's wrong. We live in a rare moment where, because Egypt has blockaded Gaza, all of the weapons making has had to be brought in-house. There's no longer the free-flowing import of rockets and contraband to the same extent coming from Egypt. That means that right now, today, we have tangible targets that can be found, unearthed, and destroyed. Rocket factories can be destroyed. Weapons stores can be destroyed. Terrorists can be eliminated, and tunnels can be dug out. Everybody here hopefully understands the feeling that I have towards every single member of the Israel Defense Forces. But I want you to know that when it comes to applying a policy of defense and the existence of your state, that policy cannot be one born of sentimentality. And so I say this: if our people are imperiled, and they are, if our elderly are infirm, our unborn children, our infants are living below ground as they have been, if our very existence hangs in the balance, and it does, the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces, every one of them, in the air, from the sea, and on land, can be sent forward, must be sent forward, and should be sent forward. Ki bishvil ze anachnu po, because that is what we are here for, and all of you should support that being done. All of you. For too long we have witnessed, and I'm not criticizing anybody, I'm merely stating the fact, a total inversion of the dynamic of the contract between the citizenry and the military. The military must draw fire, painful as that may be, in order to defend our citizenry, not the other way around. Hamas started this war. The soldiers of Israel must destroy this enemy of the states of Israel. And it can be done. It can be done. It can be done. A couple of very swift points in the 5 minutes that I have left. 4.5 minutes. Number one. In the Israel Defense Forces, as Dr. Krauthammer said, I'll come to that in a moment. In the Israel Defense Forces, we are bound by a creed. Every member of the Israel Defense Forces. It's a creed familiar to all of us. The creed is encapsulated in a single word. It's the word acharai, after me, follow me. It renders as something of a rarity when it comes to military tactics, because acharai, after me, follow me, is the last word a commander yells to his subordinates before he goes forward to make war. In other words, our officers don't lead from the back. They lead from the front. Acharai is something that an officer says to his subordinates when he says to them, let me first capture that house under fire, then you follow me. Let me first capture that hill, then you come after me. Let me first show you that I'm willing to do this, then you come and do it, but not before. Dr. Krauthammer mentioned the fact that you are so vital a group when it comes to speaking truth to power. You certainly are. How much time we have to carry out this mission will largely depend upon how much public support we enjoy from the international community. I understand that Secretary of State Kerry is en route to broker a ceasefire. Another quick myth. This fight must not be fought to a ceasefire. This fight must be fought to a victory. And so when you see your members of Congress, your representatives, and they turn to you and they say, well, in the face, perhaps they've been reading the wrong newspapers, perhaps they have the wrong talking points. Well, perhaps we should just bring about a ceasefire in the face of terrorist infiltration to kibbutzim. Perhaps we should bring about a ceasefire in the face of 1,500 rockets. Perhaps we should bring about a ceasefire in the face of people drawing in our soldiers to a battle they never wanted to fight. If any of your representatives turn around and say that to you, I'm calling on you as a member of the Israel Defense Forces, as a citizen, as a poshetayit, as a simple Jew. You find the courage to turn around and say to those legislators, Acharecha, after you. You show me you would do that here, then go and ask it of the people of Israel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And in so doing, your brethren will never go to war whilst you dwell here. You will go along with them, and that will bring along Shalom al Yisrael, peace over Israel. Thank you very much.